Hello friends, welcome to another presentation about the character of God, about who God is in your life and about you falling in love with Him, with the precious Father that loves you and wants to embrace you. We have a number of presentations that deals with the restoration work that God wants to do in our lives. In this presentation, we want to find out the type of God that we have in our minds and even perhaps what things have influenced their opinion and the vision and the type of God that we're thinking of. What events in our lives might have triggered those thoughts and those ideas about God. You see, there are actually people in this world that are running away from God. And when they describe the God that they're running away from, has nothing to do with the God of heaven that loves them. So in reality, they're running away from God in their minds, but from a God that does not exist. It's not the real God. Now, there is a statement in the book of John, in the Gospel of John, when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and He says to them in verse 32, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And that has been quoted through the ages in the Christian time in regards to many things, in regards to doctrine. You shall know the truth, and the truth is His word, and the truth is His doctrine. And there's many Christians that have claimed that verse, "Shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," about the new truths that are actually learning in the scriptures when they receive Bible studies or etc. But is that what Jesus is referring to? Notice what the Pharisees answered to that statement from Jesus. They said, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free?" Interesting. The Pharisees respond to the statement of Jesus, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," and they involve genetics in that statement. They actually saying that they don't need to be set free because they have Abraham as their father. From then on, the entire discussion of that chapter is in regard of who is the father of the Pharisees and who is the father of Jesus, and what type of father that is. It takes the discussion to a point in which Jesus says to them, "If you were of your Father in heaven, you will not try to kill me." In other words, if you were descendants of the God of heaven, that God of love, you will not be trying to kill me. Depending on the type of God that you worship, so it will be your behavior. You will be a reflection of your Father. You just need to make sure that the Father that you're reflecting is the right God. In fact, Jesus said to them, you, in fact, for the behavior that you are demonstrating, for the thought processes that you have, you're just showing that you are of your father, the devil. The father, the devil. When Jesus is referring to, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free," He is referring to a truth that is intrinsically connected with who God is and what type of father that is to you. And when we learn the truth of the type of father that God is towards us, that truth sets us free. For sure, you can use it for the new truths that you can use that statement for the new truths that you find in the scriptures, but it's not what we find in the context of the chapter. In the context of the chapter is all about who is your father and what type of father you have. Depending on the type of father that you have, that father will reveal to you something. If that something is in accordance to the Father in heaven, it will be a concept, a truth that will set you free. Free of what? Free of bondage. What brings us into bondage? According to the scripture and the biblical theology, what brings us into bondage is sin. So if sin brings us into bondage, there is a truth about our Father that if we know it, will set us free from that bondage of sin. Now, friends, it is understood in the Christian theology that sin has no reason for existence. In fact, it's not that sin does not exist, or mistakes and errors and wrongdoing and crime and pain and suffering, all consequences, all different labels of sin. Those things do exist, but sin itself has no reason for existence. If we give sin a reason for existence, we're justifying its presence. We're saying that sin is a necessity, is necessary, when in reality, the biblical theology tells us that sin was not part of the original plan for humanity. So if it wasn't part of the original plan for humanity, that makes it unnecessary for humans. It's a presence that we have to deal with, but it's unnecessary, has no reason for existence. So if sin has no reason for existence, how did sin that keeps us into bondage, and that bondage can only be broken by us knowing the truth, and that truth has something to do with the realization of the character of God as our Father, how is then that sin came into existence? Now, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, there is a number of statements there about an angel, that angel called Lucifer. And Lucifer was the most exalted angel there. And notice what happened to him. He says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations, for you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High God." Lucifer rebelled and originated the concept of sin. Remember, sin had no reason for existence. However, he exalted himself above everything and everyone around him, and his plan was to exalt himself even above God. Now, what makes an individual desire to exalt himself above his current situation, particularly when even in his current situation, he was an exalted angel. He was actually already exalted. He was the prime of the prime. What makes an individual desire to actually rise up from his current position? Well, it is the perception that he's missing something. And when he perceives that he's missing something, he moves from that state of missing something, trying to achieve something else and covering that void. Now, imagine you and your wife, you need to discuss an issue that will involve the family, and you have a 5-year-old son. And in order for the son not to be involved in the conversation, you decide to have that conversation in your bedroom. And the son knows that you are going to have a very, very important conversation, and he wants to be part of it. But for whatever reason, it's a very delicate situation. You might be discussing that you are moving away to another area, that you're changing jobs, whichever the way, that you're going back to studies. There are financial issues, whichever. So you and your wife, you walk into the bedroom and you are going to discuss that. Then the little boy comes and knocks at the door. And he says, Daddy, I want to be present in the conversation. I want to have an input in that conversation. You understand that he doesn't have the mental capabilities, neither is his position at that age to be contributing to your conversation. So you lovingly, you say to him, son, we love you, but at this point, and currently, you're not allowed to be present in this conversation. This conversation is just between mom and dad. And then you just go and you close the door. Now, imagine that boy turning around and leaving that place and going to the kitchen and sit down and start crying and crying and crying because he thinks that he's not good enough to be present with you. Now think about it. Is your son good enough? As a whole? Yes, of course. Is the fact that he was not allowed into your bedroom to discuss a serious matter a representation that you love him less? No. What about if he perceives your action as if you love him less? What about if he perceives your action as if he doesn't have enough value to make it into the bedroom and be part of the discussion? That's right. That will be his perception, but not a reality. There was a truth in that context that you love your son, but there was a lie, a perception that he felt unloved or unworthy. Now, Lucifer wanted to be present in the council of God. He wanted to be part of that Godhead council. And lovingly, God said to him, you are a beloved angel. We love you. You are precious in our eyes. But in regards to these meetings here, they are reserved for the Godhead, not for you. What makes a person trying to exceed out of a concept of being rejected? What is he trying to do? What is he trying to prove? He's trying to prove that he is worthy. He's actually trying to prove that he has value. Why is deception? Because he was already valued by God. Because he didn't have to earn God's love. God already loved him. I want you to consider this. The platform in which Lucifer jumped and catapulted himself into sin and exaltation, that platform is the platform of low self-esteem. Low self-esteem. That platform that generated sin in his heart, exaltation in his heart, originated by a concept, a perception that he was not valued, that he was not worthy, that he was not loved enough, and that he needed to do something to prove himself that he was. That same platform he transported down to earth. And he said to Eve, if you eat of the fruit that you ought not to eat, you will be greater than what you are now. You will be even as high as God himself. What is he implying in a different way? What is he implying? In a subliminal way. What is he implying? He is implying, if in your current state you are not good enough, where you are at the moment, you are not good enough. You need to do something to become worthy. Do something to gain value. And ever since then, that sin of low self-esteem and unworthiness has been planted in the human heart from generation to generation, from the culture setting to the next culture setting. And everybody in this room and everybody in the house, they have a low concept of value of themselves. they feel that they need to do something to prove to themselves, to prove to the Father, to prove to their family, to prove to God that they are worthy. But that is what brings us into bondage, not into freedom. Now, sin has no reason for existence. Why can we say that and still understand that there was a concept of low self-esteem and low self-worth from Lucifer that originated sin? Because he had not a sense to think, it was no reason to think that he was not loved. It was only a perceived idea. He perceived it. It wasn't real, but he perceived it anyway, and it was real in his heart. Therefore, the sin that came afterwards had no reason for existence because God did love him, and God did provide value for him and valued him very, very much. Now, I had a number of patients over the years that even within the first 5 minutes of the consultation, the level of low self-esteem was very evident. I'm just going to give you an example of them. This lady came to see me, and I want you to notice the language that she is using. She came to see me to lose weight. She wanted to lose weight. And she says, and I asked her, have you tried diets before? She said, oh yes, oof. God must be so tired of me. Notice, God must be so tired of me because I never stick to the diet. I fall down the wagon and I'm gaining the weight again. He must be disappointed with me. Now, I want you to start noticing that she has a perception of God based on the fact that she has not been able to lose the weight. And because of that, God must be disappointed. God must be upset. God must have so much patience. She must be very close from running out of patience with me because I'm not keeping the weight off. It was so evident that that lady had low self-esteem issues because of the weight that I actually asked her to do an experiment for me. I said to her, and I do this in a number of occasions, and I'm encouraging you that after we finish this presentation, you do the same for your own sake. I asked her to get a piece of paper, and in that piece of paper, she was going to put 4 columns there. She was going to write positive experience in her childhood and adolescence years that somehow had influenced the perception of her value in a positive way. Then I wanted her to write negative experiences from her childhood and adolescent years that somehow had influenced negatively in the perception of value and worth that she has about herself. Then, with those experiences, I wanted her to write a person that she could identify as connected with those experiences. And then, finally, the fourth column will write how did those experiences attached with that person made her feel, or what type of value did she get out of it. Now, she went home, she came back days later, and this is what she brought. Column number 1, positive, academic record. Person involved, mom. Feeling, an interrogation mark. And I'm thinking, an interrogation mark? Why an interrogation mark? I said, well, every time that I was doing great at school, my mom will be bragging about it to all the neighbors. So I said, did that make you feel worthy? And I said, well, to a degree, because every other time I was always doing everything wrong. So something starts developing in her concept, in her mind. When she does something good, she is worthy. When she does something bad, she is not worthy. Now, I went down to number 2 in her list. Negative experience, weight. The weight. Oh, remember, she came to lose what? To lose weight in the original consultation. So weight appeared there. The next person, so the person involved was mom again. And then the feeling was unworthy. I said, tell me about it. I said, well, I remember my mom telling me, if you keep on eating that much, you're going to be so fat that you're never going to get a husband. Nobody will get married with you. Huh. So now, her worth is attached to her weight. Her weight is attached to her worth. She's worthy if she's slim. She's not that worthy if she's heavy. I went down the list. Number 3, weight. Person involved, dad. How did that make you feel? Filthy, ugly, unworthy. Oh, tell me about it. And in tears, she told me that dad didn't like fat people. In fact, he made it very clear to his wife, because his wife was always making sure that she will not get that extra weight. What mom didn't know is that father will walk into the daughter's bedroom and molest her quite often through the week. And I don't know if the mom knew about it. If she knew, she chose not to say anything. So in the 12 years old girl, something triggered in her mind. In order for him to stop molesting me, I am going to become ugly and fat, and he won't like to come and abuse me. So I'm going to become ugly, fat, and worthless, so he doesn't find any attractiveness in me, and he will stop molesting me. Wow. She is only worthy with the weight off, and unworthy and ugly with the weight on. 4th one. The 4th one said, weight. Person involved, the husband. Feeling unworthy, ugly, fat. And I said, tell me about this. Well, I went to college, and somehow I lost some weight. And I lost the weight, and I actually got a boyfriend. Now guess what? The lie is now becoming a very big truth in her perception, in her mind. Mom was right. I lost the weight, I got a husband. And she got married. She had children. She put on weight. Years passed and she was overweight. And then somebody gave her a very strict diet that she could follow for about 6 months. And in about 6 months, she lost about 30 kilograms, about 60 pounds. Guess what? When she lost the weight, the husband was around her like bee to the honey. He will go to her and say, hey, you want to go shopping? You want to buy something for yourself? Just buy some clothes or whatever. I'll take you shopping. But not just to the low supermarket. No, to very high, good quality shopping centers, good quality clothes. What's the implication of that? He will never do that before and never did that after when she regained the weight. everything gets confirmed now. The lie becomes so perfectly aligned in all the events in her life and confirmed in her adult stage that now she fully believes it. Her worth is her weight, and her weight is her worth. No wonder God has to be disappointed. No wonder it will be so difficult for her to understand that God loves her with 30 kilos extra and will love her with 50 kilos extra. And if you are sitting at home and you are blaming her, and if you are actually thinking that God loves her less because of her weight, I encourage you to do that list yourself, because you might have a perception of God that is based on something rather than the God presented in Jesus Christ. When He said, "You have seen me, you have seen the Father. You have seen my behavior in front of the sinners. You have seen my Father's behavior in front of the sinners." Now, everybody has those experiences. Maybe not with the weight, maybe with something else. Absolutely everybody. How do I know that? Because the seed of low self-esteem has been planted in the human being. If you are born into this world, you are already with that seed planted, because that is the seed planted by Satan himself, the enemy of it, because it's the seed that propelled him to commit an opposition rebellion against God. That is what is forcing us to do something. In the first 5 years of life, a baby and a toddler do not have a very self-centered approach to themselves because they need to be helped. We're not like calves or any other mammal that we can stand up on our feet 2 or 3 minutes after birth. We need care. Our parents, mom and dad, are caring for us. They singing song to us. They changing us. They feeding us. Everything is all about ours, and God has designed it that way to protect the baby, to make sure that the baby is being brought in a safe environment. There is no concept of God in that baby. At that point, from baby age to 5 years of age, roughly, there is no concept of God in his mental capabilities and developments. The image of God that he has is mom and dad. Mom and dad are the image of God to that baby. We know now that parents that are absent in the first 7 years of their own children's upbringing will cause a doubtful mind and tendencies towards atheism in those children when they grow older. Why? Why would they increase the risk of non-believing in God in those children? Because the image of God in the father was never there. It was absent. And absent doesn't mean that that child is just growing up only with one single parent, but even that the father is just coming and going and not getting involved in the healthy touch of that child, and the healthy communication and upbringing of that child in the first 7 years. We know, for instance, that there is a higher risk of depression and higher risk of suicide of children and adults that were inside a mother that was considering abortion, because that was rejection even at the womb. And we know that 4 months into the pregnancy, the feelings and emotions of the mother are passed into the baby. And if the mother is already rejecting the baby, there's already a sense of unworthiness even before that baby is born. That baby is not worthy of life because mom is considering abortion. And emotionally speaking, from the age of 4 months of pregnancy until the final delivery, the mother is already influencing with those feelings to the baby. That baby is unworthy of the care, or at least that is the perception. And we know that when that baby is born, that perception has been already established. All the care will not erase things that have been established in the subconscious mind, all the filing cabinets there that will be there in the back of our minds with iron there. The sense of unworthiness. Friends, what is the God that you believe in? Will be very much in accordance of your upbringing and culture, and the way your parents treated you, the way the schoolmates at school treated you, the experiences in your life. But we have to be very, very careful and very, very aware of those influences in our lives and have a little bit of analysis of where we come from and what things had influenced our thinking. Why? Because if we believe in a God that is a result of who we are, that in the Bible is called idolatry. In the second commandment, God says, don't make any image and bow down to that image. Now, any image of what? Any image of God. Think about this. Any image of God. Why? Because, for instance, in the desert, when they were in the desert, they made an image of a golden calf. They bowed down to it, and they said, this is God that took us out of the land of Egypt. So when he's talking about don't make any carved image, don't make any carved image in the image of God, or what you think or you perceive. And he says, don't make it with anything that looks like to be in heaven, or anything that looks to be here on earth, or under the earth, or down in the sea. Now, let me ask you a question. Where is your great-grandfather? Your great-grandfather is probably under the earth. But he passed on to your grandfather certain traits of character, certain opinions, certain conducts, certain experiences that influence his image of God. So, and your grandfather passed it on to your father, and your father passed it on to you. Positive or negatives? They passed it on to you. Are you the result of the one that is under the earth? That is called idolatry. That is a false image of God. And many have it. Some months ago, I was in Spain. I was recording some programs there in Madrid. And Spain has a large community of Romanians that have immigrated there to Spain for labor and work reasons. And I asked the Romanians there, what do you think about the South American Christians? And they say, oh, a bunch of liberals. A bunch of liberals. That's interesting. There is a big South American and Central American community in Madrid. So I said to the South American community there, Christian community, I said, what do you think of the Spaniards, the local people in Madrid? What do you think of them, the Christians in Spain, the Spanish people? And they said, oh, a bunch of liberals. Oh, that's interesting. So, because I come from Australia, I was raised in Spain and live in Australia, I asked the Spaniards, what do you think of the Australian Christians? What is the concept that you have about the Australian Christians? Oh, for what we read, what we heard, a bunch of liberals. If you go to Australia, you will ask the Australians, what do you think of the Americans? The American Christians. They will say to you, they're a bunch of liberals. Isn't that interesting? everybody's a liberal, depending on who you are. I asked the Romanians, the Romanian Christians, how was life under communism? And they said, oh, it was tough. The old Romanians would say it was tough. They said, you have to follow in line. You could not be a free thinker. You could not discern yourself in things. You could not have freedom of conscience. If you felt that you felt that your way was a different way, and you were convinced about it, you had to be brought into line. Otherwise, you'll be in a big, big trouble. And then I asked these friends from the Romanian church, so what do you think if a person believes something slightly different of the way you believe your Christianity? What do you think of that person? And they say, probably just is one of those wishy-washy Christians that are just living the faith and living the narrow path. So how do you treat those people? They say, well, if they are part of our church, we need to make sure we bring them back into line. If not, we just have to let them go and have nothing to do with them. But if they are a part of our church, they have to be in the line. And I said, do you think your communist Romanian background has anything to do in the way you're acting out your Christianity? It does. It does. And that's something that we need to be very aware of. What is the image of God that we have in mind? And beyond that, is that image telling us that somehow we have to do something in order to get His approval? We have to do something in order to get closer to salvation. We need to do something in order to get the value that He wants of us. If that is the case, if your Christianity is based on what you do, and what you do makes you better in the eyes of God and makes you better in the eyes of your neighbor, that is called idolatry. You are worshiping a false God. And that false God comes because of your experiences in the past. And now ratified by continuously doing that merit-based Christianity in the present. I'm just going to send you homework, those that are here and those that are in their homes. Get a table with 4 columns. In the first column, write down positive experiences that have influenced the perception of worth that I have of myself. The second one, negative experiences that have influenced in my upbringing the concept that I have of myself. The third one, the person that was involved. And the fourth one, how that made you feel. Just write that. And this particular presentation has a follow-up. That we have entitled, For What You Are Worth. And I encourage you to watch that follow-up presentation, For What You Are Worth, after you have written down in that piece of paper that table. I'll see you then, and I hope that God will be fully manifested in you. Thank you for your attention.